Your body right now is burning, not in a metaphorical sense. At this exact moment, your cells are consuming energy, your organs are working, your brain is firing electrochemical signals, all of it sustained by the last thing you ate. Now imagine cutting that off completely. No calories, no macronutrients, just water for 7 full days. Most people assume the body simply starts shutting down, but the truth is far more complex, far more intelligent, and honestly, far more disturbing than you'd expect. What actually unfolds inside your body over those 7 days follows a precise biological sequence, hour by hour, system by system. And by the time you finish watching this, you'll understand your own metabolism in a way most people never will. Drop a comment right now telling me where you're watching from. I want to know what country or city is tuning in today. The first day without any nutritional intake is deceptively calm. You feel hungry, yes, but your body is not panicking. It's executing a protocol it has been genetically programmed to follow for hundreds of thousands of years. Within the first few hours, your blood glucose levels begin to drop. Your pancreas responds by reducing insulin secretion and increasing the release of glucagon, the hormone responsible for mobilizing stored energy. This hormonal shift signals the liver to begin glycogenolysis, the process of breaking down glycogen, which is the stored form of glucose, directly into usable blood sugar. Your liver holds roughly 100 grams of glycogen. Your muscle tissue holds another 300 to 500 grams. Together, that gives your body approximately 2,000 calories of readily accessible energy, and under normal metabolic conditions, that supply lasts somewhere between 18 and 24 hours. During this phase, your cognitive function remains largely intact. Your brain consumes about 20% of your total energy expenditure, and as long as blood glucose is maintained through glycogen breakdown, neurological performance holds steady. You might notice mild irritability, slight difficulty concentrating, or a heightened awareness of food-related stimuli. Your hypothalamus is working, signaling hunger through ghrelin, the primary appetite-stimulating hormone. By the end of hour 24, glycogen stores are nearly depleted. The body now faces a critical metabolic decision point, and what it does next is where things get genuinely fascinating. As your body crosses into the second day of complete caloric restriction, a fundamental shift in metabolic strategy begins. With glycogen reserves exhausted, glucose availability drops sharply. Your body must now find another fuel source, and it has two options: fat tissue and lean muscle mass. This is where the concept of metabolic flexibility becomes critical. A metabolically healthy body will prioritize fat oxidation. The liver begins converting fatty acids released from adipose tissue into ketone bodies, primarily beta-hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate. This process is called ketogenesis, and it represents one of the most elegant survival mechanisms in human physiology. Ketone bodies can cross the blood-brain barrier. This is significant because glucose cannot be fully replaced, but ketones can satisfy a substantial portion of the brain's energy requirements, up to 70% under prolonged fasting conditions. This is why deeply fasted individuals often report a surprising mental clarity around day 2 or 3. The brain is adapting. Cortisol levels also begin to rise during this phase. Cortisol, your primary stress hormone, plays a metabolic role here by stimulating gluconeogenesis, the liver's ability to synthesize glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, including amino acids sourced from muscle protein. This is the beginning of the trade-off your body is forced to make. Meanwhile, insulin sensitivity improves dramatically. Without incoming carbohydrates, insulin remains chronically low, which signals cells to upregulate their fat-burning capacity. Mitochondrial activity in fat cells increases. Your body is becoming physiologically a more efficient fat-burning machine, though at significant systemic cost. One more thing happens on day 2 that most people overlook. Autophagy begins to accelerate. Autophagy is the cellular recycling process by which your body breaks down and reprocesses damaged proteins and dysfunctional organelles. Nobel Prize-winning research has confirmed that fasting is one of the most potent triggers of autophagic activity. Your cells are, in a very literal sense, cleaning house. Before we move into day 3, I want to ask you something. Have you or someone you know ever attempted an extended fast, whether for health reasons, medical preparation, or spiritual practice? Tell me in the comments. And while you're there, tell me where in the world you're watching from. I read every single comment. By day 3, your body has fully committed to ketogenic metabolism. Ketone production is now in full operation. Blood ketone levels, which under normal fed conditions sit near zero, may now reach between 1 and 3 millimoles per liter, a range associated with nutritional ketosis. Several hormonal adaptations are now in play simultaneously. Growth hormone secretion increases significantly during extended fasting. Some research shows a 5-fold to 10-fold elevation compared to baseline. Growth hormone serves a protective function here. It works to preserve lean muscle tissue and stimulate fat mobilization. Your body is trying to maintain structural integrity while burning stored energy. Thyroid hormone activity begins to downregulate. Specifically, T3, the active form of thyroid hormone, decreases as a protective measure against excessive metabolic expenditure. This results in a modest reduction in your basal metabolic rate. Your body is becoming more efficient. It is slowing the burn to extend survival time. The digestive system enters a state of significantly reduced activity. With no incoming nutritional substrate, gastrointestinal motility decreases. Enzymatic secretion from the pancreas and gallbladder activity both taper off. Interestingly, some individuals report a reduction in chronic digestive discomfort or inflammatory gastrointestinal symptoms during this phase, likely due to reduced gut permeability stress and decreased immune activation in the gut lining. Electrolyte balance becomes a critical concern starting here. Sodium, potassium, magnesium, and phosphate levels can shift substantially. Sodium excretion increases as insulin levels fall, since insulin normally promotes renal sodium retention. Without adequate electrolyte management, individuals fasting beyond 72 hours face real risks of hyponatremia, muscle cramping, cardiac arrhythmia, and neurological symptoms including dizziness and confusion. Day 4 is where many individuals experience what practitioners of extended therapeutic fasting describe as a transition. The acute hunger signals that dominated days 1 and 2, driven primarily by ghrelin, often begin to diminish. Leptin, the hormone produced by adipose tissue that signals satiety to the hypothalamus, paradoxically decreases during caloric restriction, and yet hunger frequently lessens. This suggests the hypothalamus adapts its sensitivity thresholds, not just its inputs. The immune system is undergoing significant changes. Research on prolonged fasting has shown a measurable reduction in circulating inflammatory cytokines by day 4. White blood cell populations, particularly those associated with chronic low-grade systemic inflammation, decrease. Some immunological researchers have proposed that this represents a form of immune system reset, though this remains an area of active scientific investigation rather than established clinical consensus. Muscle catabolism, however, is an unavoidable physiological reality by this point. Despite the growth hormone elevation, the body's gluconeogenic demands require amino acids. Type 2 fast-twitch muscle fibers are particularly vulnerable. The precise rate of lean mass loss depends heavily on an individual's body composition, initial metabolic health, activity level, and hormonal profile. In individuals with higher baseline adiposity, fat oxidation tends to dominate, and muscle loss is comparatively slower. Cardiovascular adaptations are also occurring. Resting heart rate tends to decrease. Blood pressure typically drops, particularly systolic pressure. These changes reflect the combined effect of reduced circulating volume, lower sympathetic nervous system tone, and falling insulin levels. For some individuals, this represents a clinically meaningful improvement. For others, particularly those with pre-existing cardiovascular conditions or electrolyte imbalances, these same changes represent genuine risk. By day 5, ketone bodies are providing approximately 60 to 70% of the brain's total energy requirement. Glucose, now generated almost entirely through gluconeogenesis rather than dietary intake, covers the remainder. Remarkably, cognitive function in many individuals remains largely preserved, sometimes even enhanced in certain domains, particularly sustained attention and emotional regulation. This paradox has a neurochemical explanation. Ketone metabolism in neurons produces less oxidative stress than glucose metabolism. Additionally, beta-hydroxybutyrate has been shown in research settings to inhibit the NLRP3 inflammasome, a key driver of neuroinflammation. The brain, under prolonged fasting, may be experiencing reduced inflammatory burden at the cellular level, even as it navigates a severe energy deficit at the systemic level. Mood, however, is highly variable. Some individuals report profound psychological clarity, reduced anxiety, and a heightened sense of well-being. Others experience significant emotional volatility, depressive symptoms, and increased irritability. The difference appears to depend substantially on individual neurochemical baselines, stress hormone regulation, prior metabolic health, and gut microbiome composition, since the gut-brain axis remains active and influential even during fasting. Sleep architecture also shifts. Rapid eye movement sleep tends to decrease, while deep slow-wave sleep may increase or remain stable. Growth hormone secretion, which naturally peaks during slow-wave sleep, reinforces the anabolic signaling that attempts to counter ongoing tissue catabolism. By day 6, every major organ system in the body has adapted to the absence of nutritional intake, but these adaptations are not costless. The kidneys are working under increased demand. Gluconeogenesis produces metabolic byproducts that require renal filtration. Urea production, a byproduct of protein catabolism, places a persistent burden on renal function. Individuals with any underlying kidney compromise face elevated risk during prolonged caloric restriction. Bone mineral density begins to shift. Calcium mobilization from bone tissue occurs as the body seeks to maintain serum calcium homeostasis under altered hormonal conditions. This is not catastrophic over 6 days, but it is a measurable physiological process. The gut microbiome, that complex ecosystem of trillions of microorganisms that governs immunity, mood, hormonal signaling, and metabolic function, is undergoing significant compositional changes. Populations of bacteria that rely on fermentable dietary fiber as their primary substrate begin to decline. The mucosal lining of the intestinal wall, deprived of both nutrients and the mechanical stimulation of food transit, shows thinning in animal studies. The clinical implications for human gut integrity during extended fasting are still being studied. Reproductive hormonal signaling also shows suppression by this stage. Luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone both decrease. Testosterone levels in males and estrogen levels in females begin to drop. The body, operating under survival priority logic, reduces investment in reproductive function to redirect energy toward immediate metabolic needs. Day 7. 1 full week without nutritional intake. At this point, your body has mobilized a significant portion of its stored energy reserves. An individual with average body composition may have oxidized somewhere between 1 and 2 kilograms of adipose tissue across the week, alongside a meaningful but harder to quantify loss of lean tissue and water weight. Blood glucose is maintained, because it must be, through continuous gluconeogenesis. Ketone levels are elevated. Inflammatory markers are reduced in most measurable pathways. Autophagy is operating at a high level. Growth hormone remains elevated. Insulin remains suppressed, but the systemic cost is also real. Muscle mass is diminished. Electrolyte balance is precarious. Immune surveillance is impaired in certain domains. Cardiovascular stability depends heavily on hydration and electrolyte management. The endocrine system is running a suppressed profile across multiple axes. Here is the central truth about 7 days without nutritional intake. Your body does not break. It adapts, it fights, it prioritizes. It employs layered metabolic strategies developed over millennia of evolutionary pressure. But adaptation is not the same as optimal health. The biological intelligence that keeps you alive during a 7-day fast is the same intelligence that signals you, loudly, that this is not a sustainable state.